Yeah, we're having a meeting. I think we should do the Pledge of Allegiance first. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'll call the January 29th, 2026 special meeting of the Burleigh County Commission to order. First item is roll call of members.
Commissioner Bakken.
Here.
Commissioner Schwab.
Here.
Commissioner Woodcox. Here. Commissioner Munson.
Here.
Chairman Bittner.
Here. Next item on the agenda is public comment. There's some restrictions on that. However, anybody wish to make public comment besides Commissioner Woodcox come to the podium. Any public comment? Second call. Third call. Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment period. And we'll have a discussion of various departments. We're here today to talk about a number of positions and a number of things that we need to make a decision on. First thing would be the finance director and the deputy finance director positions. Commissioners, we held interviews for the finance director position, and all the candidates were rejected as not meeting the qualifications for the job. And so what we ended up doing was moving forward with a request for proposals for accounting services from accounting firms. Since then, there's been a couple of contacts that I'm aware of. I had a guy contact me over the weekend that is a CPA that's retired, has been in the financial business for a long time, and so his qualifications are along the lines of what we were looking for a finance director, but because he's retired, he's not looking for a full-time job. Commissioner Woodcox mentioned to me that the former finance director may be willing to come back and help us for a short time while we work through the RFP process, so that's an option. I wanted to basically see what the commission was thinking as far as the direction for the finance director and the deputy finance director. As you'll see, the second topic is the treasurer position. So we held interviews for the treasurer position, and one of the applicants is an existing employee. However, his position today is as the deputy finance director. And so if we were to move him to the treasurer position, then that would leave the finance director and deputy finance director positions both empty. And currently, the way we have the hierarchy in the office, the finance director and the deputy finance director function under the Burleigh County Commission. And so the treasurer position is essentially under the deputy finance director. So one of the concerns I had at the time after the interviews is that if we move the deputy finance director to the treasurer position and then go fill the finance director and deputy finance director positions, we'd be taking and we could be putting somebody new in as a supervisor or the next step up over the existing person that we'd move to that position. I didn't think that was necessarily a great idea, but that's part of what we're talking about. And I think maybe Pam would have some additional information on where we're at with the request for proposals and maybe a little more insight on those two positions. Pam, would you mind?
She might as well have her chair up here the whole time.
That's what I was kind of thinking,
Put up an easy chair.
Yeah.
I like the peanut gallery better.
Hey, sign in.
I'm an employee. I'm signed in already. Chairman and commissioners, we did, to just kind of add to Commissioner Bittner's summary. We did offer the treasurer position to someone. They declined. So we're back to square one with that. And we haven't reposted either the treasurer or finance director. We do have the RFP active. We have had one firm that has given us questions because they do want to reply to the RFP, give us a response. It's Bailey. And there was another CPA firm that had questions and they want to respond to the RFP as well. So we do have interest out there for the RFP. And Chairman Bittner did talk to me about the individual for the finance director consultant type position. And I haven't had a chance to talk to that person yet. So that's kind of where we're at this point.
Right, so I guess the question would be, what's the closing date on the RFP, if you know offhand?
February 11th. And we got a tight turnaround because the next commission meeting is where we have to have the results.
Yeah. The reason being for the haste in getting somebody on board and into that position is we obviously have year-end financials, we have some reconciliation stuff to do, we have financial statements, and that whole thing to have prepared here in short order. So I think the biggest question is, for the commission, is the direction we want to take with the finance director and the deputy finance director and the treasurer position at this point. And if you have any thoughts on it, that's the point in having this special meeting. Did anybody else's Taylor or anybody else that wants to have some input on that subject at this point?
I don't think they want to come up.
Well, that's why I was gonna have all the chairs right up in here. You know? Any insight on what give us a breakdown on what's happening right now and where we're at?
In the department?
Yes.
Yeah, so obviously we're down a few people right now. Our accountant has been helping out tremendously with a lot of, we're kind of, as I say, we're two people doing 4 jobs, kind of trying to shuffle everything around. Investments are well in hand, the daily stuff is well in hand. It's just some of the stuff that doesn't necessarily have a deadline that takes time is maybe falling a little behind as we, catch up on weekends and stuff. But we're meeting all deadlines that need to be met, but I will take any help that we can get. I know, Commissioner Woodcox had mentioned that our former finance director may be willing to come help, and I would be all on board for that temporarily, and until the RFP goes through, if we get a firm there that's willing to come too. Do you have any questions for me that I can answer for you?
Well, I do have a little bit of a question for you because, with you being the deputy finance director and your interest in the treasurer position, how do you see that working out?
Well, and that was, so obviously the finance director, I'm not a CPA yet, I'm working towards that. And for I know Lee and I don't know how much, we went into this with you, I know the org chart where it kind of combined the departments that was approved last year. I know our kind of thought process, and there wasn't even, we didn't get into any of the split itself, but kind of keeping the split that we had historically had between the accounting and the daily operations, but just obviously under one person that you guys appoint so that any disputes can be settled that way rather than kind of two immovable objects fighting each other. But yeah, I was just looking more, making sure that the operations were taken care of was kind of my interest. And obviously still helping. And again, like I said, we'd be flexible on who does what, or, it doesn't have to necessarily all be right now the way it always was. We can have maybe some of the deputy duties be done by the treasurer and, vice versa. So that was my just thought, was making sure that there was someone in right now dealing with the daily operations and then kind of leaving maybe a deputy open. I know you, and the way you describe it, having the kind of finance, then deputy, then treasurer, if you see it that way, then yeah, I guess I wouldn't be interested in applying for a demotion. But I know Lee and I kind of looked at them on even levels, basically. Like you're kind of splitting the duties underneath the finance director.
Right. Well, at the end of the day, somebody has to essentially be in charge in the
Yes.
office. And right now, like it or not, that's you.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
and with that, with the vacancy in the finance director, and if we are gonna fill that year end, we've discussed that a lot in the office, that still doesn't, they're not gonna be here 40 hours a week managing the office, the daily, for little stuff, little questions that come up. So yes, someone will still need to be in charge of the department, and yeah, right now, that's me.
Right. And so are you comfortable with essentially doing the treasurer position duties as the deputy finance director?
Yes, yep,
And assuming that we get somebody in for additional help, a CPA, one sort or another, you would be okay working with them and doing the year-end things that we need to do?
yes.
Okay, I appreciate that. Anything else you want to share with the commission as far as thoughts, concerns?
Not off the top of my head, but does anybody else have any questions for me?
When do you expect to get your CPA?
I mean, ideally about a year, but
Okay.
it could be up to 18 months.
Could be what?
Up to 18 months.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, David.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Woodcock.
I did visit with our former finance director and at length a couple times, and he is willing to step in almost like tomorrow to help us out and there's no time limit on that. It depends on how other things progress, but he was more than willing, well, he wasn't more than willing, I talked him into it. Helping us out for a month or two, whatever it might be, to get us by for that period, because by the time if we hire a firm to come in, it'll take them a month or two to get their feet wet, and we don't know how that would work out, but he is willing to help, and I don't think we need a motion to it, but I just think he has an open-end contract that we've had by the hour, and we could just do that for whatever time they think they need him. Not more than couple months or something like that, but till spring comes around.
See, that seems to be a good path for me as far as, we have that, that background that he already has. I understand that some of the computer stuff may have changed in the meantime and different things. However, I think that, now, I guess the question would be, is the contract still open for him?
We have a contract on file. I don't think there was an end date to the contract.
Right.
But since you gave me the floor, my wheels are turning. And I'd like to just propose something maybe
Yes,
to the
please,
commission.
do.
Clyde is willing to come in, our former finance director, and help with the year end. We need that. So I think we should do that. You have an individual that is willing to come in and help with some transition items and is a CPA. On our RFP, we had the projects and then we had the policies and procedures. There was 2 different projects. And we reserve the right to not award any of them, award them all, or award them by a project or line item. We reserve that right. So if we can have Clyde do our ending entries, we don't have to worry about that. If we can have this other person come in and help guide our deputy finance director, who's possibly 18 months away from getting a CPA, have him guide him and train him on some of the other items, and then maybe have a firm come in and help us with our policies and procedures, with the understanding that they will be training our finance director and the Department of Employees on policies and procedures along the way. Back in my career at MD Resources Group, MDU had a saying that we will hire a consultant, but part of your job as consultant is to train our employees so that they can do this on their own. I think that's the approach that we should take if we're hiring a consultant. They need to train our employees. We need to grow our employees. We just can't keep bringing someone in.
I appreciate that input, Pam, because that seems to be a good path. I would like to ask that Pam proceed with contacting this other person. Just so you know, he retired, I think it was like 19 years at a well-known local credit union as a CEO. The other guy that we had talked about would have been a good candidate, except he wasn't a CPA. And this gentleman has retained his license and kept that up. And I think it's absolutely vital that we have a CPA involved. And I appreciate Clyde being willing to come in and do the stuff that's necessary as well, and I do think we should move forward with that. And so I think that we could do it without a motion, but it's probably better if we, what do you guys think?
Why don't you state how you want to do it, I'll make a motion.
I'd rather not.
What are we gonna
I'd
do?
rather just by consensus, that's just hiring a temporary employee is what it is.
Yeah, consensus with the temporary employees, so.
Yep.
So I'm in favor of going that route. I'm always in favor of seeing our staff improve themselves, get better trained, and step into better roles within the organization, and Taylor's on that path. I would fully expect him to have the inside track for that opportunity down the road. But in the meantime, I think this is a good direction for the interim.
So there's only one additional kind of a caveat, and that is the salary of the positions. I think that the advertised salary for the treasurer position was probably a little higher than the current salary for the deputy finance director. Am
I think they
right?
were level.
Level?
They were level grade.
Okay.
But I don't think they should be level grade, looking at them both together, because if the deputy finance director is going to be presiding over the treasurer, there needs to be degree of separation.
Right. The reason I bring it up is because I think we need to have Pam look at the actual salary question and then return to us with a recommendation on what we should do with that. Does that make sense,
Mr. Chair, question for you.
Commissioner?
So when we were looking at, a few months ago, the flow chart, if you will, of the employees, I thought we decided to keep finance and treasurer separate, not being under the finance director? Or did we really go down that path and keep the finance director on top, treasurer and deputy side by side with employees below?
You know, I don't have a clear.
I
recollection
thought we
on that.
decided to stay away from that, but I'd like to see that flow chart again.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess we'll ask that staff.
She's got it.
We were given several options by Lee, and that
Okay.
was in our second October meeting
Yep.
last year.
This is what I thought we,
Did we approve?
When Lee was here as the CPA,
There's no deputy finance.
he was able to preside over the top.
Right,
Because he
because-
had internal controls
Yeah, with the CPA.
with the CPA.
Yeah, with the CPA, that's why.
And that's why the deputy and the treasurer were same
think
level,
that
because
really
they were
applies.
different sides. And they were their own internal controls.
Could you say that again, please? I was,
When Finance Director Jacobs was here, he had a CPA. So he could preside over both the treasurer and the deputy finance director at the same grade, because they were their own internal controls. One would touch the front end, one would touch the back
Right.
end. Without having Lee here, that has a hard time working.
this one's
Yeah.
here.
right.
So there's the treasurer and there's your deputy.
Mhm. Okay, well, we just gotta make
But
that work
without the
right now.
CPA, it's
Yeah.
not
It's kind of a moot
kind of a
point
point,
today.
but,
Right.
It would be a future
right.
org structure. At this point, we need internal controls before we can look at that.
Right.
Well, and that would be something that, when we go through the policy and procedures, it would be reviewed by that outside firm. And I would fully expect that if that works, how it works will be laid out by that firm. If it doesn't work, then we'll figure out the tweaks that need to be implemented to make it work. But in the meantime, I think we have a good path for an interim situation, at least get through the end of the year, and then fully giving Taylor an opportunity to proceed with his education and possibly fill that role.
Right. Okay, Pam, is there anything else you need from us in that regard?
No.
Okay, thank you on that. We'll move forward to the Deputy Veteran Service Office position.
Pam, don't run away.
Actually, before we get there,
Okay, go ahead.
what we're running into is, as we're going through this list, we're running into some pay issues. We've got compression issues. We've got the way our employee pay is structured. I'm not always a fan of just paying somebody because they were there for a long time. It's what assets are you bringing to the table? That's why I'm a big proponent of, are you going through additional training? Are you more that Swiss Army knife that we can plug and play in a lot of different places? And I think part of this conversation that we're having today might need to be reviewing what our pay structure looks like. And that, we went through that exercise while I was mayor. We went through that exercise on the city of Bismarck side, and it was rather eye-opening, and found some glaring places that taking care of our employees made sense doing it a different way.
Right.
So, Pam, I would love your
that's,
input on this, because
I think she walked up
Th-
because
this
she'll
needs to
probably-
be, before we get into all of this stuff, because we keep putting Band-Aids on things. We keep talking about stipends for employees that are going above and beyond. It's like, that tells me there's something not working correctly.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner. I think she'll share some of the conversations that she and I have had in that regard.
Chairman Bittner, Commissioners, I've been saying that we are on a pay grade and pay step structure for the 5 years I've been here, almost 6 years, and it works fine for some of our positions. And by fine, I mean it's a good structure, but I don't know if it was kept up over the years. So even our hourly pay might be a little low compared to others. But it's a good structure for your rank and file employees, your hourly employees. Where we run into a lot of issues is the department heads and even some supervisors. We can't compete.
The other side of that too, Pam, is you're the one that's putting out requests for resumes. What are we seeing?
Not a lot.
Exactly, because we're not competing with the state, we're not competing with the city, and we're not competing with the private sector.
And we know we can't compete with the private sector, but we should be at least in the ballpark with the state and the city, and we're not.
Right. In one of the last conversations we had, Pam had talked about the possibility of doing more of an in-depth study of where we're at with the individual salaries in order to give us recommendations basically across the board. Because right now we have a system where you have two employees, one can just sit in a chair and another one can do rock star work, but just because of the step and pay thing, they'll both advance at the same thing. So it's not a merit-based system really anymore. And I think that
Doesn't factor
I
in
think
the
it's gonna
training
take-
and the flexibility and.
right. Obviously, Pam and her department have been very busy because of all of these things, and we're kind of striking out on filling these positions at these current rates. I think we'll get into that a little bit when we talk about the county engineer position. However, we seem to be under the market or under the
Market.
yeah,
Or under the
essentially
market.
yeah. And so I know it's a difficult thing coming into this thing with the 3% cap on budgets and the whole thing, but the simple answer is we're having a hard time filling the upper level positions at the pay scale that we're at. So I'm asking her that, continue with this study and it'll take time, I know that, because she's been so
Yes.
busy. They've all been so busy anyway. And I suppose because we're asking for so much extra work from them, we're gonna have to consider stipends there too, right? I mean, it's just, we keep running into this.
Well,
Commissioner Buck?
So one of the things too, Pam, is, and because this is public record, and I know you have to go out for bid for a full-blown study, but just from a framework perspective, is there an opportunity to cooperate with the city of Bismarck and see what their structure, because I know city went through that exercise, so that might be a good place to start if there's benefit in that for you.
Yep, and I do have a relationship with HR Director Schmidt. I've known her for a long time.
Okay.
I also have relationships with some of the other HR directors across the state. I know Williams County does their own studies. They have their own compensation analysts that every year we get salary surveys. We get about 10 to 15 salary surveys a year that we complete. So we do have data. If we're looking for more merit-based data, we may have to do a subscription to like a pay scale type program where we can get more merit pay-based data, and then it has to be, depending on where we go with the survey data for government, it has to be aged up to the current time frame, because we're always a year behind, because budget's always a year, the next year. And I've aged data. I've done the market pay grades and merit pay. I've set those up in the private sector.
So you feel comfortable with basically what we're looking at doing moving forward, right?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so that's kind of the plan with that.
Yeah, so back on the veteran
Yes.
service. So Pam had brought up at our first meeting in January, this was one of the one of the positions we needed to talk about. I said, yes, we should talk about, and I don't know if she took that as, yes, we should apply, we should advertise, but it's been advertised. I wasn't ready for that. Chris hasn't been in the job 3 months.
Right?
I haven't had a chance to get through the evaluations with Chris or with Pam to find out what the deputy really need to be filled, or with the two positions that we already have, do we have enough? So for this to be advertised, it caught me by surprise, because I'm not ready. This is not a position that Chris and I have even had a conversation to talk about, to see if we're okay where we're at, if we need that third person, do we need a part-time person? I don't know.
Okay.
So I'm not
And
ready
whether or
for
not-
this.
Yeah.
Is that position being advertised?
It-
or is it?
Yeah, it's going to close. Yesterday it closed.
Yeah.
Yes,
But we received a call from the VSO and asked to have it posted, so we posted it.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Okay.
my concern there is simply that I'm not sure there's enough work.
Well-
I'm not in that office, and so I was hoping to get some input. Why don't you come on up?
Yeah,
Because
we haven't had
I
that-
don't know anything about it.
Right, we haven't had a
Last-
chance to even.
Well, I don't
go
know
through
if
that.
Chris knows yet either, so.
Yeah, he's not been there 3 months.
It's your department. It's like, you don't know yet, do you?
The point in doing all this is to get this information out
Right.
here to where we all know
Yeah.
where we're at with it, right? Chris?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I had called over because I thought that was the next step, after Paylocity was there after the new year. So that is why I had called HR. The one thing that would worry me about not filling it first, yeah, we'd have to look at availability. Leave still needs to be taken. People get sick. You have training. You have a two-man office as a one-man office during that time, and somebody gets sick as a family emergency. What are our options there? Are we closed? I wouldn't like, that's not what I'm trying to do. So, deputy would be important if I'm not there. I guess that's the point of the deputy, right? But absolutely, Commissioner Munson is right. I guess I did not mean to get going too quick on it. That was not my intention. No.
Well, I think with your office, we need to be comfortable that the workload establishes the need for that position.
Yep.
I think that's the kind of the underlying question.
Where I want to work with Chris during his interview process, he wanted to implement some additional outreach programs that we hadn't done in a decade. And it's one of the pieces that I feel very strongly of, that we need to actually be we need to go out of our office and visit with our veterans and, you know, in the homes, in the nursing homes, wherever they're at.
Senior center.
Senior centers. And Chris was very adamant about that during the interview process. He wanted to implement that. Okay? So take the current load. What does that add? You know, what is our projection for labor? Again, is it a half-time job? What do we need there?
Yeah, that could be a halftime outreach coordinator
But,
position. We
but
don't know
we
yet.
need to have that conversation to prepare that plan to bring back to this committee, this commission, to get it approved.
Commissioner Buckman?
So Commissioner Munson, are you thinking that we would leave that open and till budget time, and then that'll give you enough time to evaluate what that looks like, if there's a outreach coordinator that's a halftime position, or if there does need to be an FTE?
I think our
Because that's
first-
about June, so that's,
Yeah.
you know,
But
budget.
I think our first thing that we need to do is take a look at the job descriptions of the deputy, and I don't remember the title that we have filled in within the office. You know, is that
Benefits specialist.
benefit specialist, you know? Is that a combined position now moving forward? Rather than, you know, do we rewrite that job description and rather than applying or interviewing additional staff, can we combine that position and what does that look like? And from there, yes, then what does the outreach coordinator do? And so we're 30 days, 60 days away from bringing that back to you guys to present what our outlook looks like.
Okay. Well, we obviously need more information.
Yep.
The position closed, the advertisement for the position closed yesterday. Pam?
Yesterday.
Were there any applicants? Okay.
So I think Pam and I will need to meet shortly to discuss next steps with that. You know, what are our responsibilities now that we've advertised and received applicants? Do we send a letter back out saying, sorry, we need to look through the department first? I don't know. That's a legal side that we'll have to get HR involved in to find out what next steps are, and we can bring that back to the commission.
Okay, Pam, do you have any recommendations on that at this point? Thank you, Chris.
We did get a few qualified applicants, but the ranking scores are very low.
Okay.
I would recommend that we put a hold on it and just tell the applicants that we decided to put a hold on it, and it may be open later on in the year.
Okay.
And that way, that'll give us a chance to do some strategic planning for that department.
Yep. If that needs to be a motion, I'd love to make that as a motion for this position at this point, or a
No,
consensus.
I think consensus is pretty clear, but
Actually, I think we should have a motion with that, because that, we did have the motion at the table for that to be posted. Didn't we?
No,
I think.
we talked
Oh,
about
no,
it.
not that one. It was
Yeah.
just the directors are usually the ones I
Right.
bring.
Okay. So, yeah, then a consensus would be
Consensus.
fine.
So let's,
I think
if
we're
we
all
could,
in the
let's
same-
do that. Yep,
Yeah,
I think we're all on the same page with that one.
yeah.
Okay?
yep.
Thank you. We'll move forward. County administrator position. And this is on here because, quite frankly, the load of a commissioner has really gotten to be a lot. And as the county has grown and whatnot, it's just seeming more and more every day that's a position that's necessary. And part of the reason I kind of tied it to the county engineer position was simply because, does a county administrator become the kind of the oversight for all of the departments, including the highway department? Or how do you see that working out as far as the responsibilities of a county administrator at this point? Commissioner Bachman?
So my vision on the county administrator side is managing all the department heads. not being a department head, but managing the department heads. Making sure that everything's going in the same direction, because that's how we, one, make sure there's no silos, and two, make sure that we're as streamlined as possible and working as efficiently as possible. Because those department heads need to work together, but sometimes they're doing their job, and part of the role of a county administrator would be to make sure that where there's overlap, you can have overlap. If one department's got employees that need to work in some other space, it's just moving chess pieces around the board. Us meeting every 2 weeks, trying to move those chess pieces from a portfolio perspective isn't very efficient. That's what an administrator's for. That's the person that gets to manage how those chess pieces work for the betterment of Burleigh County and the taxpayers of Burleigh County. That's my vision of that position.
I would concur with that vision. That's been my thought since I was elected, before I was elected.
Right. Mr. Schwab?
When I was on the city commission, the administrator was getting more and more and more and more, let's call it power. It got to the point where if the mayor was out of town and, say, a tornado comes through Bismarck, he had authority over the commission. And I don't want to ever see that again. And I believe it probably is the same yet, unless they've changed that. But I spoke out about that, and the problem that they had was, if you get, say, the mayor, and he doesn't want to get any of the county commissioners or the city commissioners involved, basically, well, we're going to put it on the administrator. And then it got easier and easier. Well, you know, you can send trucks out to help Fargo, and we have Linton during that flood. And just kept upping up what the administrator could do, where I thought it was out of control. And it was out of control. So we got to be very careful to make sure that doesn't happen in the county. Because if you're gone as chair, Steve would be the one to make the decision, not the county administrator.
Correct.
And if he's gone, well, one of our three armories here would probably have to step in, but.
So, and I'm not privy of the way, if anything has changed, but I know from the city perspective, when I was mayor, that all fell to me. It wasn't the administrator, it was the elected officials that were in charge, and I was very cognizant of that and made sure that that did not change. I don't envision an administrator on the county side having that power that usurps the will of the voters, ever, under any circumstance. It's just an extension of the commission to do as the commission sees fit, and is fully accountable to the commission. You know, we went through COVID, we went through the Black Lives Matter stuff, and those decisions were made with the mayor and the rest of the commission, not the administration.
I don't know, did you ever have a problem like, I had the sidewalk portfolio, and sidewalks were ordered in up by, used to be, what, the East 40 or something? They're still not in because the administrator got to talking to the guy that complained that owned it, and they just never did a thing. Meantime, we're down around Elks Pool in the poor sections of town, making them do, you know, fix their sidewalks, and they didn't have to, and they still don't have sidewalks in there. That's what I'm talking about on power.
No, I
If
don't.
you talk to the city administrator or the county administrator and he intervenes, you know, and
They're not going to have that ability to intervene. Everything, in my mind, is the buck stops here at this table because we are the elected officials. We're the will of the people, and putting in an administrator is just it's adding a manager. It's not ceding power to another individual. And I would never, under any circumstance, be supportive of that model.
Right. We're not asking for a CEO.
No.
We're asking
Nope.
for a manager that works for us.
Yep.
That is accountable to us. Reading the job description that Pam had in the packet for last meeting, perfect. I think that describes that job description perfectly.
Yeah, it's the extension of this commission between.
Okay, then let's talk just a minute about the salary for that position. That position, I think as advertised or as laid out, is probably at a lower level salary-wise than some of the people that would be managing.
Managing?
Right. Is that the case or not? I'm just, Commissioner Woodcock?
Let's not forget, we have two elected officials, the sheriff and the state's attorney, who are both, they're independent, they run their own operations, and it'd be very difficult to have a manager over those two elected positions. It's gonna be a touchy situation.
Yes, it will. While we're on that subject, one of the things that has happened in the past, somebody else came along and ran for an office where the salary was at a certain level, and we didn't look at that salary level compared to the abilities of the person or the new person. I guess my question is, should we be looking at that for like the sheriff's position or the state's attorney as we're moving forward? Because that's up for election this year. And so is there assumption that a new sheriff is going to step in right where the sheriff with many, many years of services? No, I'm
Decades.
asking.
We'll just leave it as decades, not years, because he's old.
Yeah, decades. Hey, maybe you have some input on that, Kelly, but Pam, you're up first.
I think they would have to negotiate. It says in the Century Code that they have to negotiate their salary. And we put them into that pay grade and step structure, and both our state's attorney and our current sheriff do have a lot of experience in their positions, in their careers.
Sure. So how do you see it moving forward then? Like Kelly's obviously stepping out, so
Yes.
retiring.
That would be an elected department head, but it's still a department head. So that would probably be pulled out of the pay grade and pay step structure.
Okay, so is that something in your mind that we can change or work on between now and the election, or should we, or what?
That will be added with all the other ones that we're going to pull out.
Okay, Kelly, you have any input, or? Obviously, we're talking about somebody coming up after you, and
And as of right now, both candidates that are potentially vying for that position are internal, so we are gonna have some salary issues because we're already paying them. So what does that look like
That's why I'm
going
asking.
forward?
That's why
Yeah,
I'm
it's
asking.
not like there's somebody who's not within the department that's applying for, or gonna run for that position yet.
yeah, we don't know
Yeah.
yet. So,
Yet.
Kelly?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, obviously kind of a awkward situation for me to talk about, but as Commissioner Munson, Commissioner Woodcock, looking at you, call him by name. So when I was elected in 18, we did negotiate my salary. Commissioner Woodcock had the HR portfolio. Commissioner Pluso had the sheriff portfolio. And I came in with my justification for what I thought the salary should be, step and grade. And I guess that would be, there's two ways to look at this. One is you're paying for a position to be done. And so when that person comes in, they're filling that position. There's the expectation that they will meet the requirements of that job. So you pay for the job. Or do you pay for the experience of the candidate or the person filling that position? So probably not going to be able to answer it for you, what I think you should do. But that's the two ways I would look at this, is one, this is the job, and what should that person make? because ultimately, regardless of the qualifications, they're expected to meet that standard. The other side of it is, do you pay based on qualifications? I think the process has worked well in the past, where you sit down and negotiate. Obviously, I don't know what would happen if there's a complete difference of opinion on what that position should pay.
Commissioner Bakken?
We've already set precedent on what that looks like for paying for experience. And we did that through the exercise with the auditor's position. So that, I think, is something we have to adhere to, is we've set that precedent, and we have to keep that in mind when we're moving forward. So the experience part of it comes back to the conversation on where we're at with employee salaries, too, as far as what that looks like because of the experience side of things. So
It's all interconnected.
it's all interconnected.
Yep.
Commissioner Munson?
Well, and if the commission did that when Sheriff Lieben was elected, we've obviously have that precedent there as well. So that's past history. Will predict, or should predict, how we're gonna move forward with the next.
Okay, so part of the reason why I was bringing it up is so that there's not an expectation that a new guy's gonna walk in and get the same salary as the old guy.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
because that,
Yeah.
we overlooked that in the past, and I think that hurt Burleigh County. So, thank you, Kelly.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
the-
Kelly didn't hurt Burleigh County.
Thanks.
No, it wasn't. I think we have the county administrator position in the budget.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
What did we budget for? How much was that figure? And did that include staff, additional staff, the budget?
Well,
I don't think it was staff.
I think it's budgeted for a salary of right around 130 to 148,000, and it does not include staff.
yeah, I think that some of the positions that are currently filled are probably at or above that level already.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we may have to, I think we need to reevaluate that also. It's consistent with this whole conversation.
But it would be also negotiated.
Right. And another job for Pam to reach out and take a look at what others
Others,
are making. And I would expand that from just from a knowledge-based perspective. It would be awfully nice to know what different municipalities are from county versus city as well, because there's cities out there that have, and I kind of look at it from a population perspective, because that kind of dictates how robust your staffing are for other departments. So I think the better comp is what the populations look like. So we've got a lot of counties that aren't robustly populated, where cities might be a better comp. So I would like to see a little bit of both in that comparison when we're trying to figure out what that salary would entail.
Okay,
And
so
even in the
that-
century code, it lists it that way.
Yeah.
X plus.
Plus.
So much per thousand.
Yeah.
Depending on position. Yep.
So my question for clarification is, when we advertise for a position and we say the top end of the salary is, let's just say, for example, 130, are we normally negotiating up or down, or is that like a hard lid?
In the recruiting policy, the department head has the ability to go to a pay step 5 without commission approval. Anything beyond that, they have to bring to the commission for approval as a variance. You'll see Julie do that quite a bit for her, I think, her senior investigators and also her state's attorneys. She has
Okay.
to do that with.
But in the example of the county administrator and to a certain extent the county engineer position, you know, we advertised a specific salary range for the county engineer. So I'm wondering, we're kind of morphing into that conversation at the same time, but what was the cap on the salary for the county engineer? Do you recall?
And that's a 19. I don't even think that tops 200. I think it's right around 189,000. Look.
Because I thought it was advertised at a lower level.
It is. We can only advertise the minimum at a step 1 and the maximum advertising at a step 5. That's all we can advertise. We can't advertise the whole pay range.
I see. So would you have an idea of what the county engineer salary was listed as when we advertised for that position recently?
Okay, that's good. Maybe. Okay, the 19. Okay, it's grade 19, so the starting salary for the county engineer would be 108,534,
108?
108. And we could only do up to step 5, which is 120,452.80.
Okay, here's the reason I'm bringing
There's
that
the
up.
problem, right there.
That's why I'm bringing it up, because both of the applicants for the county engineer position are already making more than that,
Right.
Yes.
right? And so that's why that's part of this conversation. Thank you for that information.
So there would be a variance. We would be requesting a variance
Right,
automatically.
yeah. So as far as the county administrator position, this has to, I think, be part of the same conversation across the board. We're at the way it looks to me is during the last however many interviews that I've been in for all these county positions, and I've been in quite a few of them here lately, we're not attracting the people with the qualifications that we're actually asking for.
We need, yeah.
And I think it has, I mean, that's certainly one of the reasons. So I guess we needed to, move forward. I don't think there's anything else we need to decide on that county administrator today, but Commissioner Munson?
Mr. Chair, is it a simple allowing HR to start at a step 5 and go to 10? Or, I mean, in that variance as far, because if we're asking for a county engineer or a county administrator, I hope to God none of them are at a step 1 when they're walking in the door or applying. They have to have the experience for that job.
They wouldn't have the qualifications for
Right.
step 1.
Right. So if we're only allowing HR to go from 1 to 5, what should we be asking HR to do?
To begin with.
Clearly, that's part of the policy that she's referencing.
Right.
Because she's operating according to policy.
Right. Do we need to change policy?
Well, and that's part of the
Pam, she wants to say
overhaul.
something.
And a pay step 10 for the county administrator is at $153,940.80. I don't know if that's even high enough. It appears like that's even a little light.
So you just blew my thought out of the water.
Well, it's all the same thing here, folks.
Right.
That's essentially why we're talking about this. So, we have a number of internal candidates. And as I go through almost every one of these conversations, we have run into the same exact problem. They're already making at or near what we're talking about paying for the position. So half the comment is, well, why jump?
Why would I want the job?
Why would I want to?
Why do I want more responsibility for less money?
Less or same, yeah.
I mean, a title's a title, who cares? But that just shows the degree of compression within county salaries.
Yep.
And that's what you get when you have a pay grade and step structure versus a merit structure.
Correct.
Okay.
And somewhere out there, there's a hybrid that makes the most sense for County, because every animal's a little different.
Yes.
So I think based on the conversation here today, we're providing guidance that is going to help to answer these questions without making it too specific to the individual jobs, right?
Right.
Okay, so then I want to move on to the county engineer position. We recently held interviews for the county engineer position. There was 5 of us on the interview panel. And between the 2 candidates who are in-house, and both of them are, in my opinion, certainly good candidates for the position, I do believe that there's different strengths between the 2. But this was also a thing where the salary is advertised at less than what both of them are getting today already. And so what we did is we did a little exercise. We asked the two candidates to work together because they do work together and they work together very well. And one of the concerns I had with doing this was that, are we going to lose one of them if he doesn't get the job? Are we going to keep both of them because they both work so well together with their individual strengths? That what we did is we asked the two engineers to try to work out a scenario where it was either a co-engineer or something like that, and turns out that was a little much of an ask, I think. Do either one of you want to put in some input on what you came up with moving forward? Because what we wanted is for the two candidates to work out an acceptable structure that they are going to both work with. Casey, welcome.
Thank you. So we have lots of options. On there was nothing set. We looked at many different things. We kind of looked through different areas. I'll pass it out here real quick.
Thanks, Casey.
Thank you.
We had talked with our portfolio holder, Commissioner Schwab, and he had said, just sit down, kind of put together whatever titles you guys feel like, then just start breaking down. What do you both joint do on an everyday basis, and what areas do you both kind of concentrate on a little bit more or have been assigned in the past? Dan and I both jointly do a lot of stuff because we just do a lot of cross-training. You have to be able to go, and sooner or later Dan's going to go on vacation and it has to be able to be covered. So even the areas that Dan concentrates on more, I've worked on. The areas I concentrate on more, Dan has worked on going through there. Like federal liaison, MPO, TAC, township liaison, fleet services, bridge, culverts, new roads, new subdivision roads, stormwater management plans. Those are more what we've kind of split up in the past and concentrated. But a lot of the different areas we've looked at, just the administrative duties, supervision, planning, zoning, just the assistance that we do, reviewing plats, final plats, different things like that, going through there. So that's some of the joint duties that we've looked at and just trying to say, because we had been talked to about, okay, if it's a coal part, how would that work out? And it's, okay, you kind of work here, but there's a lot of crossover that happens and who's making the final decision sometimes in a part. And some of it comes from when you're looking at it in a design of a roadway, there's always nuances on it, and sometimes you just got to make a judgment call of which way you're going. And in the past, Dan and I would both present things, and Marcus would say, okay, we're going this way or this way, this time going forward on that. So then when it's it's kind of, okay, are we flipping a coin or how are we moving forward? But we want to do it as an effective way in the long term also, because Dan and I do work really well together, and we've talked a lot on this, and it's in the long-term health of the county. Someday we're retired, we're gone, and it's how's that going to look moving forward? Because are you always going to get two that really work well together, or is a bomb waiting to go off at some point? So we had talked about those portions. We also had looked at many different options on there. Two of the major ones, which I can pass out, and we had talked with our portfolio holder, Commissioner Schwab. He said, well, this is one way to look at it. He wasn't a big fan of it. We had been asked about Public Works, what that looks like, and how all that works. And it was kind of, okay, we can lay out what a classic looks like, but funding is a concern on Public Works because by law, gas tax and mills that go to a highway department can only be spent in the highway department. So and basically that means inside the right of way. Once we're doing drainage channels or ponds or other stuff, what we currently do is we go to the Water Resource District, talk to them about it. They actually look at, okay, we'll hire the county highway department. We keep track of everything. We bill them. They reimburse us. And that's how we've been doing that currently going through there. And there's other parts that are already set up. Commissioner Bittner worked with the South Central Water Resource District on managing the sanitary sewer water main that goes on within the county. And they deal with all the treatment plants, sewer collection, water distribution, pump stations, all that. So really, we don't, on a day-to-day basis, we just don't deal with that unless it's a manhole in the roadway that needs to be adjusted, or it's the minor stuff, really. They're South Central Water Resource District's doing the heavy lifting on that. And when you get into Public Works, you start looking at Parks and Rec, weed officer, planning, zoning, floodplain, floodway, building inspectors, townships. Sometimes you see building management in it, sometimes you don't. There's so many models of how they work and don't work. And when we put this together, it wasn't saying, hey, this has to be a certain way or anything. It was just, we got to start the discussion somewhere and then get feedback and input and refinement on how to actually make it look better going forward. And definitely the commission, we would highly welcome any comments or any parts on how you would want to lead that going forward.
Right. I'd appreciate you handing that out. So that's kind of the point here. First of all, nobody wanted to pick one over the other, right? Nobody wanted to do that, and so that's why we're having this conversation. The scores, at the end of the day, the scores between the two were so close that it was basically statistically insignificant. That based on, one person might have had an understanding of the answer that was a little different from the other one, but there was 5 of us. We were all providing input on the scores, and it was amazing. I have never seen an interview situation where the 2 candidates were essentially equal in their answers when it was all sifted down. So, can you explain this a little bit?
Okay, so let's start with the one with colors, because that might be a little bit easier to describe. It has the bright yellow on the top left. That one says the possible public works layout on there. And basically you're looking at, you could have the 2 parts, highway departments, one different function, parks, which is a position being advertised right now, that wouldn't be part of the highway department, that's actually separate. So you're looking at multiple departments. Now, public works is a different animal, like how the city of Bismarck currently runs it is basically dry services and wet services. What this is looking at is kind of almost a bigger model, because you're looking at wet services, dry services, engineering services, planning and zoning, building inspection, different parts on that. That's kind of a general idea. It doesn't mean it has to be that way. We can do it however we want. Going through there, we're just looking at what's typical models being able to go through. And once you get into, do you look at service operations, utility operations, specialized divisions? Just my opinion, Dan can definitely be great to give you his. Specialized divisions is difficult on a county of our size. You're really looking at much, much larger counties that get into that, because you're looking at just the easy one to pick on is engineering. You're not looking at engineering as a whole. It's, okay, you're specialized literally in bridges every day. You're doing box culverts, you're doing roads, you're doing signs, you're breaking it down. It's more the silo method going through there, and you're really getting into the specialized portion. Parks and Recs really gets broken down because you have so many parks. You're looking at how you manage that and really break that down into different areas, because some counties are of such a population, they have so many boat ramps, they just literally have a division that deals with boat ramps all the time going through there. And then they split it out into just how they maintain, mow, go forward, how they deal with trails and everything. I don't really think we're that size to look at such specialized divisions going in there. And a lot of it, the public work duties, we just kind of wrote out like roads and streets, that's a lot of what Brooks, our road superintendent, does every day, and we help him on those parts of just pothole, snow removal, street sweeping, signs, lights, signals, culverts under the roads and bridges. Then utilities, water, sanitary, sewer, we already touched on that with South Central. The stormwater management, just on the day-to-day basis, we work with Water Resource District on that. Solid waste, not applicable for us at all. We don't have a garbage or landfill collection. Just don't have to deal with that. Fleet services, we deal with that on an everyday basis. When you're looking at public works, you're just looking at an area larger than the highway department. It doesn't mean we'd even be touching like the sheriff's department. They have their own fleet services that goes through. So there's some areas say, well, no, we're going to have fleet service for the whole county, and they do it under that. Others split it up. There's many ways to do it. There's no one way's amazing and the rest falls away going from there. Weed officer, basically look at assisting in duties like budget development, long-range planning. Parks and rec, a lot of what we talked about, boat ramps, camping, fish cleaning. The Missouri Valley Complex, it was a real question. You can keep that separate. That can be its own thing on its part. Forestry. Right now, we remove trees where needed within the county, but someday, long-term, maybe you need a forester going through there. Planning and zoning. Currently, we just assist in the pre-applications. A lot of the plat, legal descriptions, public meetings as needed, going through there. Billing inspector, if needed under public works, you're assisting in budget development, long-range planning, townships, day-to-day basis, long-range, MPO, GIS, kind of going through there. So that's kind of just an overall thought process of what a public works may be or may not be. It's really open for how you guys want to look at that and be able to do that.
I'm gonna jump in there, Casey. We understand that we're probably not at the point where we're looking at a public works department at this point. Really, the underlying question is your suggestions between the two of you at the top.
Yep.
Regardless of how, because I don't think we're looking at making any big changes right now. Obviously, the weed officer was a part of the conversation because he's physically located in the highway department building, and that was the same sort of conversation we had here with the parks. Commissioner Schwab said, yeah, we got a desk and we can put him in. So the question is really at the top at this point, Commissioner Bakken.
Well, and one of the things too is cognizant of this is whether it's called public works or whatever, because every department, when there's the ability to cross-pollinate and utilize other stuff, you build that out. So that goes back and forth so we're not commingling budgets. But having a different org chart, having these pieces in place, what it looks like having the differentiations laid out for future growth. Mm-hmm. It's like I'm always looking at where do we need to be, and what we have right now in 5 years isn't going to be what Burleigh County is going to need, and isn't going to be what Burleigh County has to have. So having this discussion now with Dan and Casey, and what this gets laid out as we grow and the pieces drop into place and it makes sense, we're going to be ready for it. Mm-hmm. So that's my concern on why this needs to be addressed now. So you're right, Chair Bittner, in what's it look like with those two at the top, but the pieces will populate themselves underneath, and probably quicker than we think, because we are a growing county. So.
Right. No, I want to say it's great input, but my concern, Commissioner Munson, go ahead.
Well, and I think a little bit like Commissioner Bakken is, when I heard that the scoring came in so well, and there was there's not a defined simple answer.
Yeah, there's not a winner.
There's not a winner. So is it broken down into, very similar to the first sheet that he handed out? Is there an operations and a planning? And I don't mean planning and zoning side of it, but is there is there two different divisions that highway is broken out into.
Which is kind of the way I was thinking of it too,
Right.
because we're
Well,
not a
that's
wet
that's why we
dry site.
started
Yeah.
this conversation. See, so, briefly, if you will, because
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Munson needs to leave at 1:30, and we got something else that we have to.
If the
Decide
sheriff
on
doesn't
real
give me a
quick.
ticket, I can wait till 1:45.
We're not gonna give you a get out of jail free card, Commissioner. So briefly, Casey, what do you see happening at the top?
Yep.
You've spent some sleepless nights, and both of you have had a lot of conversations.
Yeah, no,
Briefly.
and we appreciate that. Dan and I, last Friday, we went to lunch and we just sat down, had a private conversation. That we went really in depth. At the end of that conversation, it was, Dan, you be county engineer, I can be assistant, and I'll support you. We'll get this knocked out, and
Okay.
we'll be able to move forward.
All right, that's about as brief as
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Woodcox.
we've talked about or thinking about having a joint department heads, and I don't like that at all. I mean, any business I've ever known or been involved with, there's always been one person that is in charge.
Right,
And
that's-
if something happens, you have to go to that. If emergency manager has a problem, they go to one person. They don't go to two, or we have a disagreement. They're both well qualified, that's fantastic. But I still think we need one person in charge and an assistant, because we never know what's gonna happen, whether they've, I shouldn't say drop dead, but who knows what could happen.
Well, I
succession
think,
plan.
Commissioner, we all recognize that. That's, clear, but this was an important exercise in order to kind of get all the pieces laid out in front of us. Dan, briefly, what do you want to add?
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman. As Casey pointed out, and I think he did a pretty good job explaining kind of all these thought processes, we've been kind of just racking our brain for the last week and a half and just coming up with different scenarios. And at the end of the day, you're right. One person at the top and an assistant makes the most sense, at least at this point in where Burleigh County's at. Casey, as he said, that's the decision that we've made in just between the two of us, that's how that would roll. However, I do foresee Casey being in more of a, I don't know how to phrase the term, but an elevated assistant, where he does take on a lot more of those roles that he's currently taking on right now, because he is currently.
Well, and that was part of my thought process too, is, and I tend to go back to the city because I know that, but with the wet and the dry side, if one left, and there was one that was a little higher than the other, but if one left, it was seamless. You didn't lose anything. That other director was in charge, and then you backfilled for that other position. So it's like a constant horse race. You're right here all the time, and that provides that stability within the entirety of the enterprise fund or the organization that you have moving forward.
Right.
So-
I do think that, you want to add something?
No,
Okay, I do think that since the two, who are very excellent candidates, my biggest concern is I didn't want to lose either one
Right.
by picking one over the other one at the time. And I think we can recognize as a commission that they have worked it out between themselves. And I think that's the path we should take, is taking the recommendation of the guys that have to work together every day, because there's just no question in my mind that they both work together very well. And I wanna see that that's continuing. But I think the question was, at the end of the day, if you want one to be like the final arbiter of the decision or something, then they have worked that out. Commissioner Schwab?
On this chart here, that is really far out, and I'm going to have to talk to Dan and Casey. I don't believe we should be in the building inspection business under the highway department.
Well, yeah, I think that came up as part of the conversation, simply because
Yeah.
Casey works so close together with the planning department,
Well,
as far as stormwater management plans, subdivision plans, road plans.
They
and
still
whatnot.
can, but, I mean, they don't have to be, I don't want to overload that highway department. If we get down the road, we're gonna have to put a building up there, then maybe some of this stuff will come true. What I'm worried about now is letting Dan and Casey carry out their plan. If we don't like it down the road 6 months, we'll change it.
Yeah. Well, I think the simplest answer is that we move forward with Dan as the county engineer and Casey as the senior assistant, and just move on.
So did you guys
And-
draw straws for who has to show up at all the meetings then?
No, you're gonna see a lot of us.
We've seen most of you at all
Well,
the meetings.
So I was after a commission of the decision on that. I think that's an appropriate path, and I appreciate you guys working so well together and coming up with that conclusion on your own, because even your own portfolio holder says, I don't want to make, didn't want to choose between you. I don't know, that shows, I think, a lot of confidence in you, both, and I hope you recognize that. It wasn't a inability to make the decision, we just didn't want to lose one or the other.
No, we appreciate that, and we
Commissioner
really
Schwab.
do.
That thing was so close that one of the people at the interview was from the Association of Counties that represents engineering division. And you would think that it wouldn't be close on account of her being there, because she doesn't know these two guys.
Yeah.
But you just can't get any closer.
Yeah, and so it's not a lack of decision-making or anything, it's just they were so close that we had to discuss this as a commission and come to a resolution, okay?
When you have the quality of candidates that we have for this job, it speaks highly of Burleigh County, and it speaks highly of the individuals.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Do
I
you
don't
want a
know if you
motion?
want a motion or anything else, but I think the consensus is that we would allow staff to move forward with their proposal.
You want a motion?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hang on. Pam wants to speak.
That's my motion.
This is gonna come back,
I
but
think
this
we
is
need
gonna
a
come back
motion to
Okay.
appoint the county
Okay.
engineer and
All
the
right.
assistant county engineer.
I'll entertain a motion to
Uh,
Commissioner Bachman.
Before we do that, though, Pam, how does that come back to the salary discussion that we had? Because,
We're going to be negotiating.
here, congratulations, you got the job, you're getting a pay cut. No,
Well, I think that as part of the motion, we would say, we're gonna negotiate that moving forward here yet, because it's obviously part of a whole lot bigger picture. However, they're not gonna take a pay cut
Right.
from their current salary today. We're gonna
or
resolve that.
tomorrow.
Right, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
is, especially with the qualifications and the capabilities of proven.
Right.
I mean, they've been here since, I think, Dan's been here since 2007 and Casey's been here since 2013. It's not we're not talking about new.
And was
guys,
involved
but
with the county prior to that, too.
Sure, yeah,
Yeah.
did a lot of work through Commissioner Schwab.
Like I said, we could review this thing, how it works, 6 months down the road, and talk pay and stuff.
Right. So, do I hear a motion, Commissioners?
So move.
Second.
Okay, I think the motion is to appoint
Yes.
Dan as the county engineer at this point with
And we
Casey.
renegotiate the salary ranges.
Okay,
Yeah, second.
very good. Thanks for the clarification. Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Schwab.
Yes.
Commissioner Woodcox.
Yes.
Commissioner Munson.
Yes.
Commissioner Bakken.
Yes.
Chairman Bittner.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you on that. The next item on the agenda is a Provident Project Manager stipend. I can't hardly speak highly enough about the work that Mary Singer has been doing as the Provident Building Project Manager. She has really done yeoman's work on attending all the meetings. She's been involved in the design and just everything. And I believe that because she's working way outside of her job description, it's not just an extension of additional work like we've talked about with the state's attorney staff, where they're putting in extra hours because their workload, same thing they're doing, but more of it. She's been working way outside of her job description, and I think we should recognize that. HR director had presented me with some information concerning the stipend, and it was consistent with the precedent that we've set with other departments and positions. I think it's based on a percentage of the salary, and so the stipend would be roughly 9,000 for the work from June to December, June or July to December, and then a step increase to, my memory's not real clear on the exact step thing, but it would be the.
Here comes
the
memory.
step. Here comes memory.
Memories here.
But it would be at the additional step pay until the completion of the project. Pam, you want to?
It would be a grade 16, step 16, so she'd go up a grade.
Okay. And I did discuss that with Mary.
She said
Unless
no.
she has changed, any further thoughts on it or anything?
Move to approve.
Well, I'll second for discussion.
Okay.
Mary's in a unique position as emergency manager in the county. So her role is to be prepared for emergencies. This has been outside of her scope just because we haven't had any glaring emergencies, so she's had a little extra time to be able to do this. But this is completely out of her scope, and I want to say thank you for grabbing on to something that was needed, because we needed that project manager, and she stepped in and has done a incredible job with that. So I just want to have that clarification that she's doing something outside of her scope, and that's why she's being rewarded, because she's done a great job outside of what her role is as the emergency manager in Burleigh County.
Right. I should point out that obviously, since she's the emergency manager and we don't have a tornado going through today, there may be
flood.
some indication of a flood today. There may be some thought that, well, maybe she's just got some extra time. That's not true at all,
true at
because
all.
she also, in addition to her role as emergency manager, she also functions as the information technology director, and she also functions as the public information officer for Burleigh County. And between the websites and the computer questions, I mean, that thing about, you asked about somebody sent an email and somebody got some emails apparently from me that never happened, and it's a phishing thing. Well, automatically.
If the
I
chair
sent it to her.
emailed you, don't answer it.
Right. Well, yeah, for today, because there's some,
Yeah.
some of that scamming thing going on again today, and it happens periodically. But instantly, I sent that to her so she'd be aware of it in case there's any threat to our computers or whatever. So she's not just the emergency manager already. We've
Right.
already tasked her with things. Commissioner Schwab, you wanted to add something?
I'm going to third the motion because she puts up with us.
Okay. Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Woodcox.
Yes.
Commissioner Munson.
Yes.
Commissioner Bakken.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab.
Yes.
Chairman Bittner.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Mary, for all the
Mr.
extra work. I appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner
quick
Whitcomb.
question, what budget would that come out of? The Provident budget or not regular salaries, right?
It would have to come out of the Provident.
Provident budget.
Somewhere.
As the,
Well,
as a
yeah,
project
we
manager,
transferred,
that's,
remember, we did take an action where we transferred Provident Fund to the general fund, I believe.
Right.
And so we're probably looking at a general fund under the amount that was from the Provident building, so. yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
Taylor, anything to add on that? Okay, thank you.
all right. We're getting close to the time that Commissioner Munson
We
wanted
need
to
to
know,
move
and
our
there's.
cars.
Yeah, the only other item on the agenda at this point was all other affiliated positions. And I think the conversations we've had regarding policies and procedures and things that we're going to be looking at real soon here are pretty well covered, and I think that would encompass any additional affiliated positions. So commissioners, unless you have anything else to add? Commissioner Schwab? Related to this agenda, of course.
I don't.
Right, because this is a special meeting, the
Yeah.
agenda is, we can't go out, and we don't have on other business or something, okay? Well, commissioners, thank you. for coming in. Staff, thank you for coming in. I really appreciate all the input and hard work, and we'll look forward to some improvements in the future. We are adjourned. Thank you.